Imagine a country where more adults are dying than babies being born. A country where entire towns are slowly disappearing, schools are closing, and houses sit empty for years. Now imagine something even more shocking. This country is not poor, it's not unstable, it's actually one of the most advanced and richest nations in the world. That country is Japan. For decades, Japan has been known for its technology, discipline, and economic power. But today, behind the bright lights of Tokyo and the famous bullet trains, a silent crisis is unfolding. A crisis so serious that Japan's own leaders have warned the country is on the brink of losing its ability to function as a society. So what exactly is happening? Why is Japan's population shrinking so quickly? And what does this mean for the future of one of the world's most influential nations? To understand that, we have to go back in time. Right after World War II, Japan experienced something remarkable. Between 1947 and 1949, the country saw its first major baby boom, with around 2.5 million babies born every year. Families were large, communities were growing, and Japan's population expanded rapidly. By the early 1970s, the average woman in Japan was still having more than 2 children, which is enough to maintain a stable population. But something quietly began to change. Starting in the mid-1970s, Japan's fertility rate started to fall below the replacement level. At first, it didn't seem like a big problem. But over the next few decades, the decline never stopped. Then another major event shook the country. In the late 1980s, Japan experienced one of the biggest financial bubbles in history. Real estate prices skyrocketed, the stock market exploded, and the economy looked unstoppable. But in 1990, the bubble burst. Stock prices collapsed by nearly 60%. Banks struggled with bad loans, and Japan entered what economists later called the lost decade. Economic growth slowed dramatically, job security weakened, and for many young people, the future suddenly felt uncertain. This economic slowdown quietly shaped an entire generation's decisions about marriage, careers, and family. And slowly, fewer babies were born. Japan's population continued growing for a while, but the warning signs were already there. In 1995, Japan's working-age population reached its peak. Then, in 2008, something historic happened. Japan's total population reached its highest point ever, about 128 million people. After that, the numbers started falling, year after year. By 2025, the population had already dropped to around 123 million. But the real turning point came in 2007. For the first time in modern history, more people died in Japan than were born. From that moment on, the country entered what demographers call natural population decline. And the gap keeps growing. In 2023, Japan recorded only 727,000 births, but more than 1.5 million deaths. By 2024, births fell even further to 686,000, the lowest ever recorded. Meanwhile, deaths reached more than 1.6 million. This means Japan lost nearly 1 million people in a single year, and projections suggest the population could fall below 100 million by 2056 and possibly around 87 million by 2070. But numbers alone don't explain the full story, because the bigger problem is aging. Japan is now the oldest society in the world. Today, about 29% of the population is over 65 years old. That's nearly 1 in every 3 people. Even more surprising, more than 10% of the entire population is over 80 years old. At the same time, the number of young people is shrinking. In 2020, Japan had about 75 million working-age people. By 2070, that number could drop to around 45 million. This creates a serious imbalance. Right now, about 2 workers support every retiree. But by 2070, that ratio could fall to just 1.3 workers per elderly person. In simple terms, fewer people will be working while more people will need pensions, healthcare, and support. And that puts enormous pressure on the economy. Japan's economic growth has already slowed significantly. In the 1980s, the economy grew about 4% per year. But since the early 1990s, growth has averaged around 1% annually. Recent numbers are even weaker. By 2025, Japan's economic growth was only about 0.1% year-on-year. Meanwhile, government debt has exploded to over 230% of GDP, one of the highest levels in the world. But the question remains, why are fewer people having children? The reasons are complex. First, people are getting married later, or not at all. In Japan, almost all births happen within marriage, but annual marriages have fallen from about 1 million per year in the 1970s to fewer than 500,000 today. Second, the average age of first-time mothers has risen to around 31 years old, much later than previous generations. Work culture also plays a major role. Long working hours, demanding careers, and traditional gender expectations make it difficult for many couples to balance work and family life. For women especially, having children can still mean sacrificing career opportunities. Economic uncertainty has also made young people cautious about starting families, and unlike many Western countries, Japan has historically allowed very little immigration. Foreign-born residents make up only about 3% of the population, far lower than countries like the UK or Australia. Because of this, immigration has not been able to offset the shrinking population. The result? Some rural towns in Japan are slowly disappearing. Schools are closing. Hospitals are struggling to find staff. And many elderly people are living alone, increasing concerns about loneliness and social isolation. Japan's leaders are well aware of the problem. Governments have introduced childcare subsidies, free preschool, parental leave policies, and programs designed to encourage families to have more children, but so far the numbers continue to fall. Some experts believe Japan must dramatically increase immigration. Others argue that deeper changes are needed in work culture, gender equality, and economic opportunities for young people. The reality is that Japan is entering a future that no modern country has experienced before. A future where an entire nation grows older and smaller at the same time. And what happens in Japan today could soon happen in many other countries around the world. Because the same trends, low birth rates and aging populations, are now appearing across Europe, South Korea, and even China. So Japan may not just be facing its own crisis, it may be showing us what the future of many societies will look like. And the biggest question remains unanswered. Can Japan reinvent itself before the population decline becomes impossible to reverse? Or is the world watching the slow transformation of one of history's most remarkable nations? Only time will tell.